My experience with an internet crusader. I apologize in advance if I look like a crybaby myself here on Reddit. I just can't find any other place where I can unleash my anger. And no, I am not looking and asking for sympathy. So my story begins in a random Facebook group. I was invited to it by an internet friend. To be specific, the group was dedicated to trolling and starting flame wars. And I joined to spectate on the idiocracy that is going on there. When I saw a meme, a dog meme, I was extremely outraged when it was created in an extremely out of context and normie manner. I called a friend who was also in the group and pointed out the monstrosity of a meme. He too was outraged by it, so we tried to correct the OP of the meme and told him the meme is out of context and cringeworthy. Instead of the OP accepting correction, he went out on a tantrum, started to call us stupid and canophilic for liking a dog meme. We argued for an hour or so with weak responses from the OP, throwing elementary level of insults to us, such as stupid or dumb, etc. When the thread of replies ends, I thought it was all over and went back on Facebook like a normie I ever am and continued browsing in the said platform. Couple of minutes later, when I came to see what's up with the group, I was extremely shocked when I saw the OP of the dog meme made a post highlighting me and my friend for being canophilic, looking for sympathy, and said that we should fuck some dogs. It was a compilation of 4 screenshots antagonizing us and not showing how he argued to us. The sole purpose of it was to gather attention and to find an ally. He did not find one, though. At this point, I don't know if I should feel funny or enraged. I responded and called the OP a crybaby, and he responded that we should just commit bestiality somewhere else. The argument, once again, are between me and my friend against the OP of the post. It lasted more than hours, not until the OP made a bad slip. He said that he does not care on 4chan and would rather use Omegle for socialization. I laughed at him and said that I shall screenshot what he just said so I could show how much of a normie he is. He is not familiar with 4chan, by the way, and he responded that screenshotting is a form of being an attention seeker and a fame whore. At this point, he just contradicted himself and called him out a hypocrite and said I shall show the whole group how much of a hypocrite he is. As soon as the post was published, he immediately responded and tried to control the damage, and once again, hurling elementary level of insults towards me. By that time I was AFK, and my friend was dealing with him, and to be honest, when I read the thread, he no longer makes sense and are illogical at his statements. When I arrived, I called him out once again a hypocrite, and told him his opinion no longer counts for being a hypocrite, and said he should just suck his own. He didn't respond that night, and I thought it was over. The next day I woke up and checked my notifications, and I saw him arguing against us during our sleep. He replied at the time span of 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. I once again responded and insulted him for being a no-life and taunted that he probably doesn't have any friends, for he just invests his time and sleep just to argue with a random person who just wants to correct his use of a meme. At this point, he no longer makes sense, started to be delusional, and claims he won the argument. He didn't. My friends and I concluded that he cannot be talked to his senses and decided to ignore him at this point. Me and my friend also decided to block him because he just won't shut up. Never ever in my life I blocked someone in social media over just an argument, but I was extremely frustrated at this point and left me with no option. By the time I'm writing this, he is now just ranting on the group, stating that the system is unfair. Was it really necessary to speak in English in an argument? English is our secondary language, And also I apologized if I had a bad grammar. And says that we live in a democratic country and shouldn't be dictated what to do. I couldn't deduct if he is either ignorant, narcissistic, plain stupid, or all of it combined. And all of this was just because of us wanting to explain a context of a meme. I admit that I may be harsh by calling him retarded and cringe, but I'm just frustrated that he cannot just accept correction and is plain apathetic regarding the matter. Thank you for listening, and I will end my story here. Summer 2018, neighbor's husband. Growing up from the early ages of 18 onwards, I always had this fantasy of being an exhibitionist and exposing parts of my body to strangers in public or people whom I intend to have a sexual relationship with. Doing this turns me on to another level, and sometimes I don't mean it, but the majority of time, it's intentional. My name is Jenny. I'm 20 years old and 5'7", yet petite C-cup, with my best bubbly looking ass. I live with my parents, yet my father works away for every 2 weeks, or a month. Depends on his roster. This incident has taken place during the summer holidays. It was Sunday morning when Mom got a high fever, which led us to the hospital early morning. I was there the whole time taking care of her till we arrived back home. As I rested her to bed and made her a warm soup, I realized that I was actually turned on from the fact that at the hospital I got plenty of stares from many guys. It kind of turns me on when I am able to do such thing without being physical. I was wearing a white cami top with a short denim skirt that reaches to my upper thighs, white thongs and flip-flops with white nail polish. The man who sat near us was just crazy and in deep stares. I mean, I could see other empty seats on the other side, but looks like my view was way better. We were kept in the kids section because the other doctor hasn't arrived yet. The guy opposite me kept giving me smiles, and since I kept adjusting my crossing legs, I'm sure he got a few glimpses of my white thong. I noticed he kept adjusting his bulge. Moments went by, and it was only Mom and I, until this dude came and sat beside us with his little daughter. He had her play with me on a small tablet so that he could interact and see my bare cleavage, legs, and foot up close. The little girl was so adorable I just couldn't resist. I do understand all these small gestures from people, specifically men. I read them like an open book. It's unbelievable. We were called in by the nurse, and on we went. Here, I felt things got a bit naughty because as soon as we entered, I saw the doctor's eyes change from a doctor to a straight-up predator. It was crazy. As my mom sat down in front of the doctor to get examined and asking questions, I was just minding my own business using my phone. He then told my mom to lay in bed and relax while he examines her further. While he was doing that, he kept looking left where I was sitting, watching my legs and asking me basic questions. How is studies, etc. As I intentionally stretched my legs on the other chair while my bare foot and legs were crossed on each other. I could feel him staring while examining my mom, so he then told me to get to the bed and just sit beside my mom while he prescribes her for the medicines. When I got up at the stool and sat on bed, my skirt lifted a bit more upwards, so I crossed my legs, but I know it's useless since he can clearly see everything. I swear the looks and stares he kept giving me was just indescribable. Fast forward, after making Mom her soup, and she rested, I laid in my bed fully naked, just turned on my vibrator and working myself like never before, fingering myself as I moaned ever slightly for the joy that I made a few people hard about me. and it was such a sensational orgasm. Around 4 p.m. the doorbell rang, and to be frank, I wasn't expecting anyone to come since my dad was away. I went down to open the door, and it was our close neighbor. She came to check on my mom, which was so sweet of her. I took this time to have a shower and finally wear some comfy clothes. I wore a loose tank top without a bra and a mini shorts, as it was only us ladies at home. An hour goes by and I hear the bell ringing again. This time it was her husband. As I welcomed him inside, I sat with him in the living room, and for the first time he stared at me like that, from top to bottom, and checking me out while adjusting his bulge. I played a little game which was trying as much as possible to tease him before we go upstairs to see my mom. I got up while getting the TV remote. The side of my petite boobs were clearly exposed, and I was really enjoying it as my nipples are hard on. I was sure I was making him go crazy till the time I escorted him upstairs to my mom's room. Just as they were leaving, the wife said she will come tomorrow morning to check on her again, and we were cool with that. Next morning, I woke up again so horny, it was crazy. I started masturbating passionately, thinking about how it is amazing for people staring at me and enjoy the view. I kept playing with my pussy with my eyes closed. I turned round on my tummy and just poked my ass towards while fingering it hard. I felt so satisfied till I finally got up. Went down first to make my mom tea and some biscuits. Gave it to her and went to shower. When I was about to finish, I hear a doorbell, so in my mind, I knew who it was. I dried myself quickly and took my towel, wrapped it around, and rushed to open the door. Keep in mind, my towel was barely covering my ass bum. As I opened the door, it was our neighbor's husband who came by with a flask of ginger tea. Before even saying hello, he was in shock in the way I appeared. He hesitated, so he gave me a flask and got down to untie his shoes. So he was doing that, I turned around and walked to the kitchen counter to put the flask. While doing that, I'm 100% certain he was able to see my ass and pussy, clearly. That's when I got really turned on. He came in the kitchen and asked for a glass of water, so I took this opportunity to try out a few things. First, I stretched to the upper cupboard to grab a glass, and while doing that, I felt my bum was fully exposed, as I could feel the breeze. And it got even better when I bent down to grab the water bottle from the fridge. I can only imagine by this point he was a rock hard on me. He asked me how's my mom, etc. Just small conversation to keep things going. I said I will take this mug of tea up for her as she will be happy. He said you don't need to tell her I came. I then stretched again to the upper cupboard. At this time, I felt a warm hand squeezing my ass bum while pushing me down to the counter as he unbuttoned his pants and started pounding me hard as he grabbed and squeezed my boobs even harder. I haven't felt so satisfied as we took it to the living room, where he didn't stop bouncing me till he turned me around and fingered my pussy non-stop, which made me shiver from my squirts. It was just fantastic. He then came all over me while leaving me naked on the couch. He told me that all day yesterday he was just jerking himself over me, which made me smile from how naughty I was. That was it. 'Twas the night before Coronamus. Some background information. This I wrote earlier for fun, and there is definitely some poetry sins in there, but I thought it was amusing enough to share. I wrote this for a bunch of my friends and coworkers who are all doing a Secret Santa thing to perk up each other's spirits due to COVID. Coronamus seemed like an appropriate name. 'Twas the night before Coronamus, and all through the streets not a creature was stirring, no tossing of sheets. All children were tucked snugly in bed, a Disney-themed mask wrapped around their heads. When all of a sudden, there arose such a ruckus. I had just fallen asleep. This shit is bupkis. I stumbled down the stairs, half in my robe, to find a knock at my door. I walked through the cove. Peering through the eye-hole, there was a brown-clad man, UPS on his chest and a name tag that said Stan. I opened with a groan and yelled, "Man, it's 3 a.m. What the hell, Stan?" He looked sheepish to apologize. Package in hand, "This fell in my truck earlier. I hope you understand." I tore the box from his grasp and slammed the door, thinking how you'll never use that service no more. Looking at the label, however, a smile crossed your face. Your friends had remembered Coronamus, and with not a moment to waste, you slid open the box and tossed the peanuts with glee. What did they send to you? You couldn't wait to see. You smiled at the thoughtfulness, book held aloft in hand. You carried it upstairs, and on the bed, softly do you land. Nightlight is on, sleep gone from your eyes. You spent the night reading from your pleasant surprise. Happy Coronamus, everyone, and to all a good night. Weird kids, college, and breasts. Okay, so during my sophomore year, 2017, of college, there was this interesting thing that happened. It's not so more interesting, but rather weird, to an extent, I guess. It's the evening time, and I have to go to my game development class. So when I enter the classroom, I see one of my buddies sitting at a computer, and I walk to sit next to him. Until that moment, everything else is happening as normal. People file into the classroom, sit down and start talking, waiting for the teacher to take roll and ultimately start class. So the teacher arrives and starts taking roll. She's going down the list as normal. When she gets down to a couple of us, she just marks us down since we already had her freshman year. After she gets done, she starts the lesson. At this point, the classroom is relatively quiet since we're focusing on the code. Okay, so this is where it gets different. For the sake of this retelling, I'm going to call the odd kid Billy, since I don't remember his name, so randomly Billy says in an extremely high voice, "What size are your breasts?" The rest of us are just in shock. I try to give Billy the benefit of the doubt. I turn to my buddy and tell him maybe he's just talking to a friend on FaceTime or perhaps Skype. My buddy says that it's a low possibility since he's sitting directly in front of the professor. The professor responds saying, excuse me? Without missing a beat, Billy responds by saying, "I said, what size are your breasts?" At this point, there is a couple of faint laughing that is filling the room. The professor then walks a little bit closer to Billy and says something along the lines of, "I don't really think that is an appropriate question to be asking." He then turns to her and bold-faced says, "I guess there are small since you don't want to tell me." As soon as he says that, we all burst out into laughter since it was just so peculiar that someone could just say that. The professor then orders Billy to go wait outside until the end of the class. That way, she can talk to him about his inappropriate behavior. The only problem with this is that the whole class is roughly 2.5 hours long, and we were only 45 minutes in. As Billy is packing up his stuff, he starts mutter some strange things to himself. I guess he thought he was quietly speaking to himself, but the rest of us could hear him, loud and clear. He started to say that if he can't get his way, everyone else would have to suffer, and that he wanted to go play Beyblades, etc. It was a whole lot of mixed mumble-jumbo. After everything was all said and done, Billy left the classroom to wait. At the end of class, Billy was, of course, nowhere to be seen. The weird thing about all of this, that it was still the beginning of the semester, and we still had around 12 weeks left of the class. I wish I could say that was the last weird interaction that he had in our class, but it was actually one of many memories that I vividly remember. You will pay. There are many consequences to your actions, but this time you will pay. Your daughter Julie is mine. You don't deserve to have her. She is being kept safe, for now. For each day that I don't receive my payment, I will mail a piece of this pretty little girl to your house, starting with her feet and working my way up to her head. If you wait too long, there will be nothing left. So I would hurry if I were you. I want 5 million. Don't keep me waiting. The time starts now. L. Mr. Jackson stood in his penthouse office and stared at the note that he just received. Susan, call 911 right now, he screamed. His secretary dialed 911 before asking any questions. His heart was racing, and he called his daughter over and over, but no avail. He anxiously awaited the arrival of the police, and when they got there, he showed them the note. They said that they couldn't do anything until they had some real evidence. They told him to be patient and wait for more notes. A few days passed, and he was growing impatient of waiting for any news. The cops had contacted Mr. Jackson and told him that they turned the case in, but they still have no evidence to go on. He was at work and he couldn't even focus on anything that he was looking at. He looked down at the paperwork that he was working on, and it was all a blur. His vision was deteriorating due to lack of sleep, and his mental illness was slipping out of existence. He looked at the picture of his beloved daughter and deceased wife sitting on the edge of his desk, and he began to cry. His phone began to ring and he quickly answered. You are running out of time. Your daughter is very beautiful, but she won't be for long. Beep. The call had ended before he could say a word. He stood up and ran downstairs to his car and sped home. When he got home, he ran upstairs to his daughter's room, and it was completely empty. He looked around the room for anything that he could use as evidence to try and get the case going. When he saw it, there was a little red box wrapped in a black bow sitting on the bed. There was a letter beside it with his name on it. His heart dropped. With his hands shaking, he opened the letter slowly. It had been 4 days since I last contacted you. As you can see, I left you a little present. Your beautiful daughter is never going to be as beautiful as she used to be. L. Jackson was at a loss of words. He looked over at the box and his heart sank. Something was wrong. He hadn't been home in a few days and his daughter was missing. So who could have been in the house? He picked up the small box and undid the bow. He closed his eyes and prayed that Julie was okay. He opened the box slowly and discovered a bloody box cutter. The words, "There will be more to come," were written in blood on the top of the box. Jackson immediately called the cops and they rushed to his house. The cops examined the box, they took out the knife, and they found a little bag under it. They took out the bag and their faces were met with horror. There were 4 toenails, one for each day that Jackson waited to pay. The cops called it in, and a giant search started. It lasted all night, but nothing came out of it. Jackson started to panic. Why does this always happen to me? Why can't I ever seem to find happiness? Why is my happiness always taken away from me? He thought. Another day passed and he got another letter in the mail. It's day 5. I wanted to play with her for a little bit. But now I'm getting bored, so I'll give you the location where I want the money dropped off. Do not get the police involved, or your daughter is as good as dead. I'm watching you. I know your every move. Do anything out of line, and I will kill her. L. Jackson didn't know what to do. He couldn't get help from anyone. He was lost. He was alone. He looked down at the letter, 815 South Pelican Boulevard, 7:30 p.m. Leave the money in a bag on the red park bench and drive away. I will contact you again once this has been done. I will check every day, but you better hurry. She is running out of time. This address is for a local park, he thought. Anyone could just walk up and take it. He brushed the thought aside and went to the bank. He pulled out $5 million and an extra $100,000 just to make sure everything was going to go smoothly. He sat in the parking lot for a while and thought about everything that was happening to his daughter, and he couldn't do a thing about it. He felt helpless. He couldn't stop thinking about how every promise he made her about always being there to protect her was broken the very minute she was kidnapped. He felt so useless and that he had let her down. He opened the glove box and pulled out a sheet of paper. He began writing. I have paid what she wanted, in full, and added an extra $100,000, so please return my daughter. She is my most prized possession, and I can't live without her. I will do anything, please. Let her go. He walked over to the red bench and sat the money down. He put the note in the bag and left. The next day, he woke up to rustling in the kitchen downstairs. He jumped out of bed and grabbed the pistol that he kept in the nightstand beside him. He crept downstairs and looked around the corner into the kitchen. There he saw his daughter tied up. She was sitting in a chair with tape on her mouth. She had tears rolling down her face, and Jackson ran over and untied her. She hugged him and cried. She had no visible scars or bruises, but she had many mental ones. She pulled a letter out of the back pocket and handed it to her father. He grabbed the letter and then opened it without a second thought. You did very well. If you would have gotten the police involved, she would have been dead. If you would have sent only the $5 million, she would be dead. If you didn't follow my directions, she would be dead. Don't worry, I never touched her. The bloody box cutter was from cutting into meat, and the nails were fake ones that I touched up a little to make them look real. She doesn't have a scratch on her. You will no longer hear from me. This is the end. L.